Well, welcome everyone. Nice to see a full Zendo. And just while I remember, for Margaret, we are meeting at Tilly's today afterwards, and Tony's booked an indoor room, so it'll be warm if you want to come and join us for Sangha conversation after this. So someone in the Sangha asked if I'd give a talk on desire, so I'm going to do that. And any time there's a topic that you'd like a talk on, please let me know. It's kind of nice for me to get suggestions. Otherwise, I just follow my usual kind of things that I like to talk about. So don't hesitate. It's kind of a gift for me to get a topic. So desire. And I did want to read in a little while some sort of traditional words on desire from the Noble Eightfold Path and Bhikkhu Bodhi's excellent small book. But before that, I wanted to share just some of my own thoughts about ways to think about desire. So it seems to me that there's kind of two ways to pursue happiness. One is maybe has a sort of a temporary quality to it, and one has a more permanent quality to it. So maybe the more temporary form of happiness is when you want something and you get that something, then you feel happy. Or you don't want something and you don't get it and you feel happy. That form of happiness, of course, has got a temporary quality to it. You're glad things happened the way you wanted and it feels good, but then a kind of that peak drops off. I guess a very obvious example is if you follow sports and then your team wins. There's great joy, great happiness, but then life goes on, you've got to get in your car, there's traffic getting out of the stadium, life goes on sort of thing. So there's nothing wrong with that kind of happiness. It's just very important for us to understand that that kind of happiness isn't permanent and has a cyclic quality to it that requires effort and disappointment because we don't have control of externalities. So any happiness that's bound to specific things happening in specific ways will have inherently connected to it a certain amount of suffering. Not because there is a moral figure keeping account and doesn't want you to be happy so that you get kind of a punishment for your happiness. It's nothing like that. It's not a moral kind of force. It's just a fact. This is so beautiful about Buddhism. Buddhism is really about trying to understand the world as it actually is. And even though we can't actually succeed completely in doing that, we're doing our best. And the fact is that when we have happiness that's connected to phenomena, and all phenomena is in a state of flux and is temporary, and therefore it's always going to change. So when our happiness is connected to something that's going to change, the happiness is going to fade. It's just inevitable that the happiness will fade. It's nothing wrong. It's not a moral thing. It's just the way reality is. And so in a way, in terms of this sort of happiness, we can choose it. We can choose sometimes to want something that we know, coupled with the pleasure that we'll get from that something, will also get suffering. We'll also get maybe sadness, or disappointment, or maybe pain. any number of things. Relationships are great examples of that. Relationships pretty much always have a certain amount of pain associated with them. But maybe they're worth it. It's something for us to work out. But I think if we're aware that with that sort of happiness, that sort of temporary, undulating happiness, that with that happiness will come pain, then maybe the pain won't be so bad, and maybe the grasping for the thing that makes us happy will be less. So, we'll want that thing, we'll get that thing, we'll lose that thing, and it won't be quite so painful if we understand how it works. So that's that kind of happiness. But the other sort, which we often talk of as joy, comes from just having an awareness of the present moment and understanding the interconnectedness of us with this present moment and with everything in this present moment. And what kind of goes with that is that we don't exist as a separate entity, so kind of with this kind of knowledge, simply being aware has a certain joy attached to it. And that sort of joy, that sort of happiness, isn't really subject to conditions, because now is always now, and here is always here. We can never escape the here and now. We're always in the here and now. It's very, very reliable. It's 100% reliable. And so if we can have happiness just from the mere fact of remembering that we're in the here and now, that kind of happiness is very stable. So I just wanted to say that about happiness, because desire is in pursuit of happiness. Generally speaking, you would say that that's what desire is about. We all want to be happy. It's a perfectly reasonable thing. We're a conscious, feeling animal. But we want to be a bit careful that we're not trying to get our happiness through these temporary things that are going to change. And if we invest too much in that kind of happiness, we're just going to be on a treadmill of happy, sad, happy, sad, happy, sad. And people often do feel a bit like their life is like that. It's got a precarious quality. Or some people, if their lives are fairly blessed, in a conventional sense, they get quite a lot of happiness with not too many terrible things happening. But there's a kind of a knowledge all the time that at some point, like, I might get arthritis, or I might get cancer, or I might, like, everybody knows, even when a life is going pretty well, and as well the person is in a situation where they have a lot of influence around externalities, everybody knows that ultimately it is fragile. And that's hovering in there. And often we describe that as sort of a restless unsatisfactoriness that runs through people's lives. But when we can cultivate this other type of happiness that is just about simply noticing, oh, here we are. Here we are, look at this interesting rug. Just that kind of joy that comes from just the ordinary world, that's so stable. And it doesn't mean we're going to feel that every single minute. It just means it's there for us to tap into as often as we are able. And it's a much more stable form of happiness. And then we can punctuate, the way I like to think of it for myself, is that I can punctuate that kind of happiness with this other kind of temporary happiness. And I understand that little spike in that kind of desire being fulfilled is very temporary, and will probably have a little bit of pain associated with it, but I might choose it. So that was one thought I wanted to say about happiness. And the other that's related to desire, and the other thing I wanted to mention is how to distinguish between needs and desires. And the line is really unclear. when is something a need and when is it a desire that's not really a need. And I think each of us just needs to check that out for ourselves, almost moment by moment. But also there's kind of needs that move over the years. Something that's a need when you're younger becomes less of a need when you're older, and vice versa. And different periods of our life, certain things like maybe career becomes a need, an appropriate thing to have a need for. And maybe at a different point it's not so much. And it changes for us all throughout our lives what a need is and what a wish is, a desire is. One way maybe to be able to distinguish, it can be a little bit granular and hard to tell, is if it's a need and you fulfill it, the feeling maybe is more peaceful and easeful because it really was a need and you fulfilled it. Whereas if it's a desire and you fulfilled it thinking maybe it was a need, it maybe won't feel quite so peaceful afterwards. There'll just be that awareness, going back to the comments about happiness, that it's kind of temporary. It's very subtle, and I think we just need to be honest with ourselves. Is this a need that I have, or is this a desire? Is it a little bit of both? Is it shifting? And nobody can know the answer except each of us individually. And that's why we do Zazen practice, so that we can have cultivated this sort of mental capacity to notice our thoughts in our mind, really notice them. Because there's layers of thoughts. There's loud thoughts, and then slightly quieter thoughts, and underneath that maybe even quieter thoughts. And that quietest thought might be influencing the thoughts that are closer to the surface. So in Zazen we develop that capacity. So then we might be able to better distinguish, is this a need that I have? Or is this just something I want? And if it's something I want, I can pursue it, but it'll be probably coupled with a bit of suffering in some way at some point. So we can just choose. I always write these notes and I just never look at them, but I just write them. I think I've said everything that's there. I did go over some basic needs, extremely obvious basic needs: food, shelter, clothing, water. Very obvious ones, very appropriate to fulfill those needs. But they're also something that vary a lot person to person. And the Buddha experimented with that, as we know, before he sat under the Bodhi tree. He experimented with trying to completely minimize to the barest the physical needs. And in doing that, he discovered that that didn't seem like the most effective way to awaken. And he saw that to deny the body food and to deny it warmth and to deny it sort of a safe haven, a home of some sort, to deny it all of those things, if that was the path to awakening, then only a very small number of people could do that. And it would completely cut out all the people who have children, for example, or people who need to earn money because they're caring for family members. And so he realized after a number of years, I don't think this is a path that can lead to the liberation from suffering. So we need to fulfill those basic needs, and we need to work out how much to fulfill them. And I think it is really good to cultivate a kind of live simply, so all may simply live kind of way of being, to try and simplify our needs. And we can simplify our needs. So it's a good practice. It's a safe, karmically safe, to try and live simply. And then there's other needs, like because we're social animals, we need people. And that might be in the form of a romantic partner, could be in the form of close friends, or could be sangha, could be just sort of a few sort of close spiritual friends or teachers. It might be we might meet our social needs through an interest that we have in common with other people. People often do that. They have groups that they're involved in that share an interest that they have, and that's meeting their social needs. So we all have social needs, and that varies across our life, what those social needs are. Some of them are needs, and some of them are additional kind of wants or desires. And that's that fine line where we can't always tell. And we just have to experiment and look at the results to get a sense of, is this really a need that I have that I'm pursuing, or am I creating a whole lot of difficulty for myself? Maybe it's a desire that I don't really need and I could let go of it. We each just have to find out through our own practice. So I'm going to read a little bit from Bhikkhu Bodhi, who I have great respect for. He's one of our living great teachers. What page? So I'll read a couple of pages. It might take a little while. And it's fairly dense writing. So some of it might you'll catch some of it and some of it you might not catch, and that's okay too. The Buddha describes his teaching as running contrary to the way of the world. The way of the world is the way of desire, and the unenlightened who follow this way flow with the current of desire, seeking happiness by pursuing the objects in which they imagine they will find fulfillment. The Buddha's message of renunciation states exactly the opposite. The pull of desire is to be resisted and eventually abandoned. Desire is to be abandoned not because it is morally evil, but because it is a root of suffering. Thus, renunciation, turning away from craving and its drive for gratification, becomes the key to happiness, to freedom from the hold of attachment. The Buddha does not demand that everyone leave the household life for the monastery or ask his followers to discard all sense enjoyments on the spot. The degree to which a person renounces depends on his or her disposition and situation. But what remains as a guiding principle is this: that the attainment of deliverance requires the complete eradication of craving, and progress along the path is accelerated to the extent that one overcomes craving. Breaking free from domination by desire may not be easy, but the difficulty does not abrogate the necessity. Since craving is the origin of dukkha, putting an end to dukkha depends on eliminating craving, and that involves directing the mind to renunciation. So I just want to say before I continue that sometimes when people read these teachings, it feels kind of heavy and a bit depressing. And so I always like to say, these teachings do not mean that we don't have happiness and joy. We can cultivate living a simpler life and reducing our desires without becoming kind of glum and depressed or anything like that. That there's still enormous joy, that there's a great liberation that comes from not having a lot of desires. I think we just have to pick which desires we're willing to carry the burden of. Like I have a desire for my son to do well, my older son who has some challenges. And with that desire to want him to do well, I suffer quite a lot. I really do. But I'm picking it. I want it. I don't mind the suffering that goes with that wish for him. I don't mind it. And that makes that a little less painful because I pick it. So we can still pick even conventional desires. We just have to know the price that we're going to pay. And it doesn't have to be terrible, it's just the fact of the matter. Having children's a good example in general. They're wonderful, they're painful. Having partners is wonderful. It's usually also a bit painful, sometimes very painful. So we just have to know what we're doing. But here, this is the traditional teaching with the emphasis on really moving towards having less desire. So the problem arises of how to break the shackles of desire. The Buddha does not offer as a solution the method of repression, the attempt to drive desire away with a mind full of fear and loathing. This approach does not resolve the problem but only pushes it below the surface where it continues to thrive. The tool the Buddha holds out to free the mind from desire is understanding. Real renunciation is not a matter of compelling ourselves to give up things still inwardly cherished, but of changing our perspective on them so that they no longer bind us. When we understand the nature of desire, when we investigate it closely with keen attention, desire falls away by itself without need for struggle. To understand desire in such a way that we can loosen its hold, we need to see that desire is invariably bound up with dukkha. The whole phenomenon of desire, with its cycle of wanting and gratification, hangs on our way of seeing things. We remain in bondage to desire because we see it as our means to happiness. If we can look at desire from a different angle, its force will be abated, resulting in the move towards renunciation. What is needed to alter perception is something called wise consideration. Just as perception influences thought, so thought can influence perception. Our usual perceptions are tinged with unwise consideration. We ordinarily look only at the surface of things, scan them in terms of our immediate interests and wants. Only rarely do we dig into the roots of our involvements or explore their long-range consequences. To set this straight calls for wise consideration, looking into the hidden undertones of our actions, exploring their results, evaluating the worthiness of our goals. In this investigation, our concern must not be with what is pleasant, but with what is true. We have to be prepared and willing to discover what is true, even at the cost of our comfort. For real security lies on the side of truth, not on the side of comfort. And then there's just a little bit further down here. The pain that accompanies separation is proportional to the force of attachment. Strong attachment brings much suffering. Little attachment brings little suffering. And then this one, which I think is very difficult. No attachment brings no suffering. It's tricky, this concept of no attachment brings no suffering. I like to use the word non-attachment, which means, for me, it means that you are attached, but in a non-attached kind of a way. Like I'm attached to, in a certain kind of a way. I want Twining Vines to thrive, and I want the Dharma to grow here in Australia in this particular lineage. I do want that. But it's better for me to want that in a very kind of light way, in a sort of a non-attached kind of way. Because otherwise, I would be like, yay, lots of people are here today. And like, oh God, only 4 people are here today, you know. Yay, there's 12 people at Morning Zazen. Oh, only 5 people at Morning Zazen. You know? So that just wouldn't be terribly helpful for anybody. So that's another thing to consider. It's all right for us to have wishes and aspirations. We just have to hold them lightly, and then there can be no pain then when they don't come to pass. There can be just, oh, okay, that's the new reality that in this moment. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to plug in the microphone so that people online can hear. Would anyone like to comment or ask a question? And I'll just make it so I can see people in the Zender. I mean, online Zender. So, Tony, I'm just going to hand you the microphone first. It's around for a moment so people can see who.
Yeah, thanks, Nettie. I think it's a great topic. I think Arjun Brahm, one of he frames this thing a slightly different way. He says, which one do you want, freedom of desire or freedom from desire? And so that's my comment. And the question is like the way Bhikkhu Bodhi describes it, it sounds like you're just sitting there looking at a desire and go, I know you. I'm not going to indulge in you. Whereas sometimes you're really gripped by a desire sort of thing. I need another piece of, I want another piece of chicken. I haven't had chicken for a long time, especially chicken wings, because I love chicken wings sort of thing. And there's this whole battle that takes place sort of thing. And on retreat particularly where, you can say, I need more food. I suppose it just sounds a little bit lacking in emotion, the way he describes it there. And I suppose, and maybe you might want to talk about, like, I suppose my experience is actually on retreat towards the end, everything starts to settle down a bit more. The meditation obviously has an effect, an effect, but there's also so the meditation can help reduce desire, but there's also wisdom, like he's saying, but that can be hard that can be a lot hard sort of thing. Yeah.
So could you just explain a little what Ajahn Brahm says about freedom of desire, freedom from desire?
Yeah, sure. He says that there are two types of desire in the world: freedom of desire, which is sort of celebrated, written up, I think, in the US Constitution, the right to find happiness, and that to pursue things that will make you happy, and then there is a type of desire which is found in monasteries, why people have through the practice they're not moved by desire so much that they just don't, those desires don't arise as much. They become what's the correct term? Equanimous. Equanimous. They become equanimous become more equanimous to the world. And I know in terms of my practice over years, I've become more equanimous, and that, so you're less pulled around by all those things and that. So yeah.
Yeah, so that brings up a good point that kind of fits with a little what I was saying about desire. I've just checked. Can you hear online okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's great. Thanks. Good. That when we have, like, in a way that sounds a little bit like meeting our needs. Okay, I forgot to mention too that we have needs like creative needs and to use our intellect and to feel satisfaction by engaging with the world in a way. And I think that sounds like freedom of desire that he's speaking about.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So that's really wholesome, and I think this is when is something a human need, and like we need we need safety, we need a certain amount of freedom to express ourselves, but we need to work out that point in which it crosses over into something that then isn't really a need. and then creates trouble for us. And the comment that you made too about it's not always so easy, it's not like a dispassionate thing. I have that with coffee, which I know I talk about. It's probably boring, but still, I have 1 coffee a week now. And it's early Sunday morning because I leave at 5 a.m. to drive down to East Gippsland. So I let myself have that coffee on that morning and I really enjoy it. But the price I pay for that is all week. I have to say to myself, you can't have it today. It's not Sunday morning. No, you've got to wait till Sunday morning. You've got to wait till Sunday morning. Whereas when I was drinking no coffee, I didn't think about it at all. So I've created a little bit of suffering for myself that all week I have to say, no. Sunday morning, yes. So it's like, that's a really good example. And I can see logically it would be better for me to just quit it, not do that. But I am taking it as something I'm choosing. I really enjoy that 5 a.m. in the dark with my coffee in the car that I got from the petrol station. I'm driving down the Monero. I like it. So I'm choosing it, but I pay a price. And that's just a very simple little example, where of course there's far more complex examples. But I've been battling with myself about this silly question, and I'm still doing it. At some point I might mature enough that I'll give it up altogether, but maybe I won't. Maybe it's part of, we're all unique Buddhas, and that might be one of my unique expressions, is to do this thing. Each of us.
Every day.
Right?
Or have one every day.
Yeah, I can't sleep if I drink coffee. It's just, I can't do that. It's not not a moral thing. It just doesn't work for me.
It's not through austerity. It's
not
that. It's not that, as you mentioned, the Buddha's and the denials. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Jamal, the phone.
We need to start offering you dana in the form of copies. That's torture. Sorry, thank you. I just wanted to ask a question about, I guess how people, or how we as Buddhist practitioners can support people to get over the kind of the first hurdle with desire. Because like one of the things I hear a lot when I might talk about Buddhism, I talk to friends or whatever else, or have a podcast or whatever. It's like I say these things like, oh yeah, you have to the desire leads to suffering, and maybe you might want to give that up and pursue contentment instead of happiness, or these different Buddhist things. And one of the things that often people say is like, oh, but I want to want things. They kind of dismiss out of hand that first hurdle of actually not wanting to want things in the first place. Because I think, as Bhikkhu Bodhi has mentioned, it's the way of the world, right? We're taught that the best possible thing you can do is want things, that the most productive member of society you can be is a consumer who wants to go and buy lots of things. And I think so many people are so kind of caught with that. And it's such a basic assumption that why would I even want to not want things? And a lot of people don't get over that barrier. So I guess the question is, how do people do that, or how do you support people to do that?
Suggestions?
do I have suggestions? I mean, sometimes for me, I guess I don't. I mean, sometimes for me, it's just about letting people realize for themselves that that's a path that is leading to suffering, or kind of maybe trying to have the conversation more at moments when people are suffering and they're more likely to go, well, I'm not happy with how this is going. But if someone's very happily going about the world wanting lots of things, it's quite hard to share a message that maybe they should let go of some of that.
It's a difficult thing. Sometimes when people have said Buddhism seems kind of a bit depressing, which sometimes, particularly reading some of the early Pali Canon, it can sound that way. I sometimes say, well, look at the people who are saying these things, and do they look depressed? And mostly they look really cheerful. I mean, most Buddhist teachers have got a cheerful, light-spirited quality about them. So sometimes I say, well, I know it might sound that way, but have a look and see what you think about the person delivering that message. The one who delivers the message is pretty important to look at, the delivery. So I have often said things like that. And even when I've started to have some doubt at certain points in my practice, I've thought, but look at, just the well-known teachers. Look at the Dalai Lama, look at Thich Nhat Hanh, look at my teachers. They must be onto something, even though it's sounding kind of like, I remember the teachings on mind only, which I won't talk about now, but I remember being confused by them, thinking they sound like disconnected from reality. I don't like the sound of them, but the people delivering those talks to me, I really liked them, and I liked the way they were in the world. And so that gave me confidence to say, okay, I'm going to examine those teachings more closely. So that's one thought. My other thought is people actually usually come to practice because they are suffering. That's what brings people. So in a way, that's how we turn misfortune into a benefit. Is we're suffering from anxiety, or we lose a relationship, or we lose a job, or we feel kind of like, what's happening to my life? And we turn to practice initially to try and alleviate our own distress. And then we discover, actually, there's a way to have a deep joyfulness that's not dependent on these external conditions. So I think sometimes you certainly can't kind of convince people to, especially something like meditating, sitting here, so contrary to anything that the society suggests that we do. It's usually uncomfortable initially for people mentally and physically. After a while, it becomes very restorative and replenishing, but initially it's kind of hard. So I think that's why we don't really proselytize very much in Buddhism, particularly Zen doesn't. It's more, yep, you can join us if you want. It's more like that. We don't go out.
On that very point of not proselytizing, even just having had that discussion, however brief it might be, the person who rejects Buddhism as not conducive to their lifestyle of wanting to go out shopping and so, there's still that seed has been laid, and it's got to recur on occasion. They don't need to sit with it for burdened with this thought for their whole life, but it must be there, and it may, you would hope that there's progress made as a consequence.
Is there anybody online that would like to comment or ask a question? Margaret.
Yes. Firstly, on a light note, Nettie, I love your coffee story. I can't drink any coffee at all, or I can't sleep for about 48 hours, although I love coffee. But I do allow, and chocolate is even the same, too much caffeine. But I allow myself one piece of chocolate every night after dinner. And I'm perfectly happy with that. I know I can have it tomorrow night. I know I can always have it. And I'm happy with it. So that's sort of a nice adjustment, maybe with your once a week coffee. But it seems to me that this whole idea of desire seems almost insurmountable. I have an overwhelming desire that human life and all life will continue on this planet. And it's looking more and more likely that that's not going to happen. And I can't stop wanting that. I just can't. That seems so callous. And I think of my family and the suffering that they might have to undergo, and millions of people and millions of creatures. So I can't let that go. So I guess I either pay the price and suffer for that, or is there a meta level where, by being aware of it.
Oh, just froze. It's frozen, Margaret. Oh, what a shame. It was a great spot. Just wait a bit and see if it comes back. Well, maybe I'll say something in relation to that. I think it's good for us to have aspirations and wishes for things to go well for people. That's what metta is, our metta practice. We wish for all beings to be liberated from suffering. No, we lost Margaret. I'll send her an email later. But it isn't actually helpful to want it so much that it's causing us lots of distress. It's like what I was saying about wanting twining vines to grow. You need to hold it in a way that isn't going to make it so that your energy is getting burned up by your desire, which means you don't have energy to do the things that need to be done. So in relation to climate change is what Margaret's referring to. What I like to think is I'll just do what I can do and not try and hold on too tightly. Just wish things for things to go as well as they can go and do what I can. But if I have this desperate sense of, no, we have to make it go right, that burns up energy that's not productive, actually. So each thing that we're doing is having its effect, and we can just trust that we're doing our little part. Oh, here she comes again. Hi, Margaret. You just need to unmute again. You have to unmute. There we go.
Right.
Yes, great question. I don't know if you heard anything I said. You probably weren't able to.
No, I didn't hear a thing.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much you heard of what I was saying.
Oh, I think we heard most of it. I think it just cut out near the end. Or maybe just to repeat a little bit, I think we have this practice, a metta practice, which is, wanting all beings to be well and to not suffer. That is part of our practice. But we have to hold that with a certain amount of lightness, because if we hold it too hard, we want it too badly, that actually burns up our energy so that we're not actually able to be beneficial. So we do have that aspiration. We do want that. We have to hold it lightly enough and accept the possibility of things not going the way that we want, be able to accept that, and then we actually have more energy to be useful. So it's not giving up. It just is finding this balance between a wish for things to go well and not a need for them to go well, in terms of you can't be happy unless you're sure they'll go well. So we don't have control over that. So I often think that even if, let's just say, humans don't make it, let's just say, we still can be living lightly on the earth so that some beings do make it, and maybe some people do make it. And because we are part of everything, well, then we're looking after ourselves as best as we can, even if humans specifically, those who feel that this might be the future, even if humans don't specifically make it. Sea creatures might make it, and insects might make it, and some little furry creatures might make it. And that's important and that's valuable. But humans might make it too. And I just like to acknowledge that you've done so much in your life for this cause, Margaret. Yeah.
Well, it's one that's very important to me. I think some people have the capacity more easily, I think, to manage conflicting views or conflicting facts even. And some of us are burdened with a lack of that ability. So it weighs more heavily on us. But I kind of like to have the big picture and think of the universe rolling on and the sun and the planets still rotating, and there's a beauty in that too. And also that humans have suffered intolerably as long as there's been life on Earth. There's been suffering. And that's just part of it.
Yeah.
Can't have good without bad.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Well, we better finish up because we're going to meet at the cafe in a while. So we'll do our closing chant and then some 3 vows together. Oh, do you want to do a little clunk? Things are bliss. I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to friend them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable. I vow to become it.